all of you all that are gonna go home and write a biography on how wrong this is, you guys can kick rocks. What's up, fam? Candace Parker here. I'm gonna do a tier ranking of WNBA players. I'm gonna try. Then you got Angel Reese. I put her right at that C level.
It was supposed to be a power move. A towering billboard of Angel Reese beaming over Chicago, hyping her up as the face of the league. But instead of praise, it triggered a storm because, right behind that glitzy marketing stunt, the Chicago sky were falling apart on the court. Then came Candace Parker, not with shade, but with surgical precision. One of the most respected legends in the game stepped up and said what nobody else would. No amount of flashy ads or double-double stats can hide the truth. Parker didn't just question the stunt, she exposed it, called it what it really was. Fake hype trying to mask an ugly season. What followed was a complete unraveling. Fans started asking questions, analysts began pulling receipts, and Angel Reese, she found herself in the middle of a firestorm. But this was only the beginning.
How many times have I said Angel Reese is not an impact player? I mean, she definitely has an impact on losing, but Angel Reese has absolutely no effect on winning.
When the Angel Reese billboard first went up in downtown Chicago, it was meant to signal dominance. A towering image of the self-declared Bayou Barbie lit up the skyline, with bold phrases like rewriting the game and face of the future. It looked like a victory lap before the race had even begun. But almost immediately, fans began to question whether the celebration was earned or just another example of a narrative being forced down their throats. On paper, the billboard was supposed to elevate Reese's profile, but in reality, it felt more like a distraction from what was actually happening on the court.
Through nearly 2 seasons in the WNBA, the only thing Angel Reese has proven is she can't win games.
The Chicago Sky were struggling badly, blown out in multiple games, turnover issues, chemistry problems. And at the center of it all, Angel was posting double-doubles while her team suffered loss after loss. It didn't take long before the backlash started brewing. Some fans called it a PR stunt with no foundation. Others were harsher, saying the league was manufacturing superstardom instead of letting it be earned. And then, just when the controversy was picking up steam, Candace Parker weighed in and things exploded. Parker didn't come out swinging with personal insults. That's not her style. She sat down, looked at the facts, and spoke with the calm authority that only a multi-time champion and finals MVP can command. Her critique was, razor-sharp stats without winning don't make you a superstar. And just like that, the billboard lost all its shine.
Uh-oh, Candace Parker. You've upset the Reese's Pieces and they're not happy about it. They're gonna be coming after you any second. Oh, they're already coming after you. Oh, snap. Oh, snap. Candace Parker asked to put certain players in a tier list. You have the S tier, you have the A tier, you have the B tier, and you have the C tier. And where Candace Parker put Angel Reese on this list and her explanation about it, it has upset a large number of the Reese's Pieces.
Parker pointed out what basketball purists had been quietly saying for weeks. Angel Reese's flashy stat lines weren't leading to victories. Her rebounding was impressive, yes, but her turnovers, poor decision-making, and defensive breakdowns were costing her team dearly. Candace wasn't attacking Angel's character. She was attacking the illusion the billboard created, the idea that branding and real basketball impact were the same thing. Suddenly, Reese's entire narrative began to shift. What was once seen as a breakout rookie campaign started to feel hollow. The double-double queen label was exposed as a smokescreen for inconsistency, and that massive billboard, fans now saw it as a symbol of everything wrong with the WNBA's attempt to force rivalries and hype without merit. The real kicker? Chicago Sky's own performance didn't just fail to back up the hype, it actively contradicted it.
Angel Reese is not an impact player. She's not someone you can rely on to carry a team to a championship. The Chicago Bravado, they cannot rely on Angel Reese to secure off-season access to the Golden Toilet. Hell, she can't even get them to the playoffs.
The team had a better win percentage in games where Reese played fewer minutes. That statistic alone made the billboard look not just tone-deaf, but flat out embarrassing. This wasn't just a bad PR move, it was a turning point. The billboard that was supposed to cement Angel Reese as a superstar instead became the spark. That lit a firestorm of accountability. And the first match was struck by Candace Parker herself. But what she revealed next would pull the mask off the entire situation. Candace Parker didn't raise her voice. She didn't insult, mock, or belittle. She simply told the truth, and that truth hit harder than any insult ever could. While Reese fans were spiraling over the Billboard backlash, Candace sat down on a podcast and delivered a calm, professional evaluation that cracked Angel Reese's manufactured image wide open. She began by clarifying one thing. This wasn't personal. I love Angel, Parker said. This isn't about who she is. It's about basketball. That distinction was critical. Parker wasn't taking shots at Reese's character or her confidence. She was analyzing her game, and from Parker's vantage point, it was clear Reese hadn't earned the praise being handed to her. Parker's main argument was simple. If you want to be ranked among the WNBA elite, you have to carry your team. Not just show up, not just pad stats, but actually impact winning. Parker pointed to players like Aja Wilson, Breena Stewart, and Nafisa Collier women who elevate everyone around them. Players who lead on both ends of the court. Players who don't just shine individually, but make their teams better. And in that regard, Reese wasn't even close. She acknowledged Reese's hustle on the boards once denying she can rebound. But Parker explained that offensive rebounding alone doesn't make you a cornerstone player. In fact, it can mask deeper issues like poor offensive flow, lack of court vision, or an inability to space the floor. And that's exactly what's been happening in Chicago. Candace ranked Reese as a C-tier player, not a B, not an AC, right next to rookies who've barely played and injured stars who haven't seen the court in months. That wasn't a jab, it was a message. Reese might be popular, she might be marketable, but she's not there yet, and pretending she is, that hurts the league more than it helps. The internet exploded again, but this time it was different. Analysts began backing Parker up. Coaches quietly nodded in agreement. And fans especially, those who had actually been watching Sky games, started seeing what Candace saw. Reese's turnovers, her missed defensive rotations, her inability to handle ball pressure. These weren't one-off mistakes, they were patterns, and Parker's calm breakdown forced everyone to face it. What made it so powerful was how Parker delivered it. No drama, no theatrics, just authority. Coming from anyone else, the critique might have been brushed off as jealousy or bias. But Candace Parker, she's one of the most respected voices in women's basketball. When she talks, people listen. And this time, what she said made it impossible to keep pretending. Reese wasn't being dragged, she was being evaluated, honestly, professionally. And the results weren't pretty. But what made the situation worse was what Chicago's coaching staff did next. They ignored the warning signs, and that set the stage for the unraveling that followed. Up until this point, Angel Reese's defenders had one shield they clung to, her double-double streak. No matter what the scoreboard said or how chaotic the sky looked on the floor, her supporters would shout, "She's making history." That shield shattered during a brutal game against the Minnesota Lynx, performance that pulled back the curtain and exposed the truth behind Reese's numbers: 9 turnovers. Let that sink in. In a professional basketball game, 9 turnovers by a single player is catastrophic. Yet that's exactly what Reese racked up, along with a -19 plus minus. The stat line told one story another, double-double with points, and rebounds, but the eye test told a completely different tale. This wasn't just a bad game. It was the moment the illusion crumbled. Reese was tasked with more responsibility that night. Instead of sticking to her role under the rim, the coaching staff tried turning her into a point forward. The result? Disaster. Sloppy passes, traveling violations, no-look turnovers that landed in the stands. Passes so off target, teammates didn't even attempt to catch them. It looked less like a rising star taking control and more like someone desperately trying to prove they could be something they're not. What made it worse wasn't just the turnovers, it was how unnecessary they were. These weren't the result of suffocating defense or aggressive double teams. Many of them came from unforced errors, lazy footwork, over-dribbling, and trying to thread passes through non-existent lanes. It's high school-level mistakes being made. On the professional stage, and this wasn't an isolated incident, it was the peak of a trend that had been building all season. Analysts, who had once stayed quiet, began to speak up. Fans who had been riding the hype train began to question the route. Reese's double-doubles started looking like empty calories, impressive on a box score, but damaging when you break down the film. The Minnesota game made one thing painfully clear. Her style of play wasn't just flawed, it was hurting her team's chances to win. And the final insult, the Sky lost that game by 23 points. While Angel was stacking stats, the game slipped further and further away. And yet, she was kept on the floor in the fourth quarter, not to help win, but to make sure she reached double-digit points and rebounds. It felt less like basketball and more like a PR campaign playing out in real time. The moment became a flashpoint. Opposing coaches began studying that film like a manual. Commentators started pulling receipts, and Candace Parker's words. They aged like prophecy. That one game didn't just expose Angel Reese's limitations, it revealed the WNBA's problem. With manufacturing stars before they've proven themselves, it was no longer about potential, it was about production. And in this moment, the truth was undeniable. Reese wasn't carrying the team, she was dragging it down. And still, the league kept pushing the image, but that wouldn't hold up for long. After that disastrous game against the Minnesota Lynx, a new trend began to emerge across the League One that exposed just how fragile Angel Reese's game really was. Opposing coaches didn't just brush off the Sky's meltdown as a fluke. They studied the film, they broke down her mistakes. And then they did the most dangerous thing you can do in professional sports. They developed a blueprint. The strategy was simple: target Reese, force the ball into her hands, pressure her into making decisions, crowd the passing lanes, and wait for the cracks to show. Over and over again, it worked. Teams realized that Reese's confidence with the ball wasn't backed by control. Her dribbling was loose, her court vision was inconsistent, and when defenders pressured her, she often panicked, forcing passes or trying to create plays that simply weren't there. Instead of using her size and rebounding instincts as an advantage, she became a liability when asked to facilitate or run the offense. This wasn't just about stats anymore. It was about on-court IQ. Reese was failing those tests regularly. Analysts picked up on it immediately. Former players turned commentators began highlighting how opposing defenses shifted to exploit Reese's weaknesses. They noted how often she'd get baited into committing turnovers, how even basic zone defenses could throw her off rhythm, how trapping her on the baseline almost always resulted in a panic, pass, or a travel. And the worst part, this pattern wasn't hard to spot. It repeated itself game after game. She was doubling down instead of refining her decision-making or simplifying her role. The Sky coaching staff kept feeding her minutes and responsibilities she clearly wasn't ready for. It became a vicious cycle: more touches, more pressure, more mistakes. And with every high-profile mistake came another round of backlash. The Billboard now felt like a joke, a relic of a PR team out of touch with on-court reality. Meanwhile, other players around the league thrived. Caitlin Clark adapted to double teams and tight coverage by making her teammates better. Nika Ogwumik used her experience and efficiency to elevate her squad. Even rookies like Cameron Brink were showing smarter decision-making with half the hype. But Reese, she was becoming the most predictable star in the league to defend. Coaches no longer feared her production. They exploited it. They turned her double-double obsession against her. They clogged the lane, daring her to shoot. They pressed her after rebounds, knowing she'd try to dribble out instead of passing to a guard. Every touch became a she walked into it, over and over again. What was supposed to be a highlight season turned into a case study in how hype can unravel. And while Candace Parker's ranking once seemed harsh, it now looked generous. The league had crowned Reese too early, and the opposition. They simply tore the crown off her head. As Angel Reese's flaws became more obvious, fans expected one thing: for the Chicago Sky coaching staff to course-correct, adjust her role, scale back her minutes, protect her development. But instead of pulling back, they pushed harder. Instead of fixing the system, they kept feeding it. And that decision said more about the franchise's priorities than any press conference ever could. Game after game, Reese's minutes stayed high even Even when the turnovers piled up, even when the plus-minus dropped into the negatives, coaches defended her by pointing to her rebounding numbers, her energy, and her historical double-double streak. But those numbers were becoming increasingly hollow. They didn't lead to wins. They didn't improve team chemistry. And more often than not, they masked the real issues: poor ball movement, stagnant offense, and a team that looked disjointed when Reese was the focal point. Candace Parker's criticism wasn't just a shot at Reese, it was a mirror held up to Chicago's leadership. What are you actually building here? A winning team or a brand campaign? The numbers didn't lie. In games where Reese played fewer than 30 minutes, the Sky's win percentage improved significantly. The offense flowed better, turnovers dropped. Role players like Marina Mabrey and Dana Evans stepped into bigger roles and looked more comfortable. And most telling of all, the team looked like a team: balanced, focused, cohesive. Contrast that with games where Reese was heavily featured: forced post-ups, ball watching, long stretches where teammates stood frozen, unsure whether to cut, clear out, or wait for another off-balance shot. It wasn't just about Reese making mistakes. It was about the entire offense being shaped around a player who wasn't ready to carry that burden. And yet, the coaching staff didn't budge. Why? One answer kept floating to the surface: branding. Angel Reese wasn't just a player, she was a personality. The league had invested in her image. Endorsements, interviews, magazine covers. The Billboard wasn't a fluke hit, was part of a larger machine trying to turn her into the WNBA's next big thing. And Chicago, instead of pushing back and protecting, their system leaned into it. The result? A franchise that looked lost, a locker room that felt divided, and a coaching staff that appeared more interested in headlines than victories. When Candace Parker made her tier ranking, she wasn't just calling out Reese, she was calling out a culture, one where flash is favored over fundamentals, where hype overshadows hard truth, and where coaches, either unwilling or unable to be honest, allow a flawed system to spiral unchecked. Fans noticed, analysts noticed, and most of all, opposing teams noticed. Chicago had a chance to fix things, to put team success over individual branding. But they didn't. They chose the Billboard. They chose the empty double-doubles. And in doing so, they chose losing. That decision has now defined their season and, possibly, their future. From the very beginning of their WNBA careers, Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark were marketed as the league's next great rivalry. Two polar opposites in style and personality. One brash and bold, the other cool and calculated. The league leaned in hard, turning every game between them into a media event. But behind the flashy headlines and fan feuds was a glaring problem only. One of them was actually elevating the league through performance. Caitlin Clark wasn't just racking up stats, she was transforming the Indiana Fever. Her presence immediately opened up spacing, improved ball movement, and made everyone around her better. Even in her rookie season, she showed poise, leadership, and a deep understanding of team basketball. Every time she stepped on the court, the Fever looked more organized, more dangerous, more complete. Angel Reese, on the other hand, was producing numbers but at a cost. While Clark's game lifted her team's floor and ceiling, Reese's game often left the Sky stuck in neutral. Her rebounding numbers were impressive, but they didn't translate to wins. Her ball handling was erratic, her passing inconsistent, and her defense exploitable. And yet, the league continued to frame their interactions like a heavyweight clash. The truth, it was never a rivalry on the court. It was a marketing campaign. Behind closed doors, analysts and former players knew the gap between the two wasn't close. Clark's shooting, playmaking, and decision-making were years ahead. And it showed in the standings, the advanced metrics, and the eye test. But to keep the story alive, the league kept manufacturing drama-fueling debates, hyping up matchups, and ignoring the growing disparity in impact. It all came to a head when Reese's struggles could no longer be hidden. While Clark was breaking viewership records and leading game-winning comebacks, Reese was committing 9 turnovers in blowout losses. The comparison became too painful to keep up. Fans who had initially bought into the media feud started questioning what exactly Reese was bringing to the table beyond her brand. Candace Parker's comments accelerated that shift. When she placed Clark in the A tier and Reese in the C tier, it wasn't just a ranking was a rankening. Parker was saying what many had been thinking. The league can't fake greatness, and trying to force a rivalry where one side clearly isn't ready only cheapens the product. The fallout was immediate. Social media turned. Commentators turned. Even Reese's most loyal supporters had to acknowledge that the results weren't there. The myth of the Reese versus Clark era collapsed. Under the weight of reality, Clark was the real deal. Reese was still trying to find her footing. And in that collapse, the league faced an uncomfortable question. How much damage had been done by pushing a rivalry that wasn't real? Because while Clark continued to rise on merit, Reese was now trying to play catch-up not just with her game, but with the expectations that had been unfairly placed on her shoulders. For months, Angel Reese's supporters defended her at every turn. No matter how bad the losses got, they pointed to her box scores. Another double-double, they'd say. She's making history. But something changed after that Lynx game. 9 turnovers, a blowout loss, and footage that showed not a rising superstar, but a player cracking under pressure. Slowly, the illusion began to fade, and fans started turning on what they once blindly defended. It didn't happen overnight. At first, it was subtle. A few fans tweeting that no-look pass was wild. In the worst way, then came memes comparing her turnovers to highlight reels, except the highlights were of the opposing team. From there, it snowballed. Comment sections under Reese's social media posts turned into debates, then arguments. Eventually, many fans who once called criticism hate started admitting something felt off. The numbers didn't lie anymore. They weren't impressive, they were suspicious. Why was a player getting so much media love when her team kept losing? Why was a billboard going up while the Sky were sinking in the standings? Why were the coaches still treating her like the centerpiece when the offense ran better without her? Candace Parker's C-tier placement only made fans look closer, and what they found was hard to ignore. Reese wasn't an impact player yet. She wasn't elevating her teammates. She wasn't making winning plays. And the games weren't even close, for losses by over 40 points in one season. That's not a team problem, that's a system problem, and Reese was at the center of it. Fans started asking questions the league didn't want to answer. Was Reese being kept on the floor to help her stats, not to help her team? Were the Sky more focused on branding her than developing the actual roster? Was the WNBA so desperate for marketable stars that it crowned one before she had even proved herself? Even Reese's double-double nickname began to get mocked. Social media dubbed her Turnover Barbie. Others posted clips of her being blocked by defenders who didn't even jump, followed by sarcastic captions like, "She's him." The humor masked a deeper shift. Fans were no longer buying the narrative. More importantly, they were no longer afraid to say it out loud. And when you lose the casual fans and the hardcore ones, that's when the image collapses. The same fans who cheered Reese's college swagger were now rolling their eyes at her media tours. They didn't hate her, they just wanted results. And more, it felt like she couldn't deliver. This wasn't a cancel moment. It was a wake-up call. Basketball fans are smarter than the league gives them credit for. They don't care about brand slogans or flashy promos. They care about wins, impact, and leadership. And once the fans turned on the illusion, there was no turning back. The hype machine had stalled, and the only thing left was the truth. Candace Parker didn't just critique a player, she kicked open a door the league had tried to keep shut. Her calm, no-nonsense analysis of Angel Reese wasn't just about Reese's on-court struggles, it was about a culture that had been quietly growing in the WNBA, one where image was beginning to outweigh impact, and branding was prioritized over basketball. Her words became the catalyst for a league-wide reckoning. When Parker ranked Angel Reese in the C tier, it was more than just a rating, it was a statement. It said, let's stop pretending. Let's stop handing out star status based on social media numbers, endorsement deals, or catchy nicknames. Let's start rewarding actual performance, leadership, and the ability to elevate a team. That moment forced everyone from fans to front offices to reevaluate what they thought they knew. Suddenly, players who had been overlooked were being appreciated for what they brought to the game. Role players who consistently contributed to winning were getting a second look, and loud, flashy stat lines that didn't move the scoreboard started getting questioned instead of celebrated. For the WNBA, this was uncomfortable but necessary. The Reese-Clark rivalry had brought massive attention, but it was built on shaky ground. Caitlin Clark delivered in real time. Her presence transformed the fever, improved ratings, and brought in new fans. Reese, meanwhile, was being carried by narrative. That contrast became too stark to ignore. Once Parker highlighted the truth, the league had a choice: keep doubling down on the illusion, or pivot to what actually works, building stars around skill, substance, and winning culture. And make no mistake, Parker's comments made that choice a public issue. Fans weren't just asking why Reese was still being hyped, they were asking why other players with real impact were being overlooked. Why was someone like Kelsey Mitchell, who drops 35-point games and plays elite-level basketball, not getting billboards? Why were players like Alyssa Thomas or Nika Ogwumike still fighting for national attention, despite carrying their teams? Parker's credibility gave weight to every question. This wasn't petty drama. This was a respected legend saying, "We've got to get this right." And perhaps most importantly, her message was not meant to tear Reese down, it was to pull the curtain back, to expose the system that had set Reese up for failure by making her the face of something she hadn't earned yet. A role player cast as a superstar, a young talent burdened by expectations she wasn't ready for. In the end, Parker didn't humiliate Reese. She rescued the conversation. She reminded everyone what greatness in the WNBA actually looks like. And she forced the league, the media, and the fans to stop faking it. The real stars don't need billboards to prove they're elite. They prove it every time the ball touches their hands. And thanks to Candace Parker, the spotlight is finally shifting back where it belongs. Candace Parker didn't tear down Angel Reese out of malice, simply told the truth the WNBA was too afraid to say out loud. In a league desperate for stars, it handed the spotlight to someone still learning how to handle it. Reese was crowned before she was tested, elevated before she was ready. And when the cracks began to show, they weren't just in her game, they were in the system that propped her up. What Parker did was necessary. She reminded everyone that the WNBA's future can't be built on flash, social media moments, or empty box scores. It has to be built on substance, players who make their teams better, who show up when it matters, and who earn their respect through performance, not promotion. Fans are waking up. The illusion is fading. And now, the league stands at a crossroads: continue chasing clicks, or return to honoring real basketball excellence. Candace Parker sparked that conversation, and in doing so, she may have saved the credibility of the game she helped build.